Hey everybody, Daniel Newman here, Principal Analyst, Founding Partner at Futurum Research, and we're back for another episode of Futurum Tech TV. And I am excited to have a conversation today, bringing back Mr. Dave Shull, Poly CEO, to chat with me a little bit following earnings and about some other happenings that are going on over at Poly. Dave, great to see you again.
Thanks, Daniel. Good to be here again.
You know, it's been a long week. I think I told you backstage, but I think it'd be fun for everybody to hear this. You know, made my first transatlantic trip this past week since COVID, and that couch behind you, I'm not gonna lie, is looking very comfortable. You forget, we got into really good practice. I traveled 48 weeks a year.
Right.
Poly, by the way, you guys are busy trying to save me from that with the technology you guys build, but I forgot about jet lag. I legitimately forgot how bad jet lag is.
You need some comfy headphones with music, and you just kind of vibe out. It's the only way to get over jet lag.
You know, when you do it all the time, though, and you're traveling all the time,
Right.
and you know, and you're going in and out of time zones, you really do almost start to acclimate to the pain.
Absolutely.
And you just deal. But after a year and a half of very little travel, I'm now on day 3. I returned on like midnight on Tuesday night. Wednesday was a disaster. Thursday was like I was like having vertigo all day, and today I finally feel somewhat normal again. And
Well, welcome back to America. We're glad to have you back in our time zones.
Thank you, my friend. I just wanted you to say that. That was all I was working toward.
See, when I did my international travel this week, Daniel, I went down to Tijuana, Mexico to visit our factory. No time zone changes. It was easy. You got to go north and south.
You know, I've done that sometimes. The only issue you can run into is weather. When you do the north and south stuff, and not necessarily going to Mexico, but, you know, like I've done some stuff in like Santiago, Chile, where you literally go down there and you're in the middle of summer and you're like, why is it snowing here? Because it's like you're not used to, like, actually, you don't flip time zones, you flip seasons.
That's right. That's right.
That's another fun thing. We'll have to get back to that at some point in the next, I don't know, 5-10 years when after the Omega variant, or whatever, the Zeta variant, or, you know.
Oh man, let's be optimistic here. Epsilon, and then we're done, we hope, right? Yeah, I'm not sure that's the case.
It's like hurricane season. You know, now we're going to just have a whole practice of naming storms and variants.
Well, you know, I spent 3 years at the Weather Channel. That was always part of the fun, is picking the names, you know, for the new hurricane season. That was the best part of the job.
I'll have to have a talk with you offline about media sensationalizing the pain and suffering of a 1-inch rainstorm. But I do understand we need people to watch and pay attention. So speaking of watching and pay attention, you know, a lot of eyes on Poly over the last few quarters. You guys saw, you know, quite an emergence. I still remember your last appearance on CNBC. Did a great job. We saw, you know, the share price really grow as people started to get more confidence behind the growth of the company, especially in the higher margin video products. You're, you know, a few quarters into the seat now. Talk a little bit about your latest earnings and just kind of how you're feeling about the company now that you're emerging, or that we are hopefully emerging from the COVID-19 pandemic.
You know, I think what's encouraging me is that we're still seeing substantial year-over-year growth. Now, our June quarter of last year was tough because it was the first quarter really a full-on COVID. So we are seeing a re-emergence from where we were a year ago. We're still seeing massive growth in the video space year over year, which is also very, very encouraging. So I think that's all great news. The demand remains very strong. We've said publicly that we would have expected sequential quarter over quarter growth a couple quarters in a row here based on demand. And so it's really just an issue of supply chain that we're trying to sort our way through.
Yeah, I mean, we're all kind of seeing across the tech board, and I cover earnings of a lot of companies, semiconductors, of course, something we all watch very closely. And you guys, you know, depending on, one of the really interesting things, Dave, is we talk a lot, spend a lot of time on leading edge, but a lot of the technology might be like a USB interface or a PCI interface, and you're talking about a lagging edge, 28 nanometer, 32 nanometer node. This is what's holding up a lot of hardware products, services, vehicles, and, you know, because of the type of hardware you make, I'm sure some of that lagging edge, or, you know, we're not talking 3 and 5 nanometer. You know, we're talking about stuff, and it's you could probably sell more units if there was more supply. I mean, is that kind of what you're
well, absolutely. We could sell many hundreds of thousands of units with a little bit more supply. But it's been educational for me as well, understanding a little bit more of where our supply chain really overlaps with the automotive space. And as you said, at some of the larger semiconductor geometries, which are some of the older geometries, and that's where the automakers are overlapping. And so we're doing everything we can to make sure that our designs going forward are in the newer geometries. which our newest products are. And so it's been an interesting balance in terms of cost of the chips versus availability here.
It's crazy. 6-figure SUVs that can't ship because of a 27-cent chip.
Right.
And so therefore the stereo, you can't get the stereo option into the car. Yeah. So you make a great point. So, we've made some, back and forth here already about the pandemic and what's going on. And I use the term hopeful and we talked about emerge, but we also can't turn on TV news right now without hearing about Delta. Return to work. But for Poly, that delay, let's not, we never want to look at this situation as, the misfortune being anyone's fortune, but we've obviously seen how much digital and technology have accelerated as a byproduct of companies having to work around the misfortunes of the pandemic. Do you see this complicated return that is once again being slowed, whether that's returning to office, returning to events, what is that kind of impact out there that you're seeing right now, and how does that impact Poly?
I think it has two impacts. I think first of all, it's demonstrated to everyone that it's going to be a hybrid world, that even if it's not Delta, it's going to be something else. And so we need to embrace that and not assume that it's going to go back to normal. I think this stutter step that we as a world have experienced with Delta has kind of driven home that point, which is if it's not Delta, it's going to be something else. And so we should always expect to have video calls every time we have a call and to always have someone in the room who's dialing a remote. Because I think that's the way to take care of our teammates. That's the way to take care of our partners. And that's got to be kind of the right approach. And so from a technology point of view, that really kind of triples down on the need for equality in the conference room, equality between those who are in the room and those who aren't. So that's really issue number one. Hybrid is, if anything, been re-emphasized and reconfirmed by Delta. Number two is we have seen some delays on some video installations in certain countries that are a little bit uncertain about their return to office. We've had some delays here in the States, but I'm really talking outside the US, where there's been lower vaccination rates. And so governments are trying to figure out, okay, what does that mean? Is that a 3-month delay, a 6-month delay? And so as a result, some companies are doing proof of concepts with our video gear, but they're rethinking what they thought was going to be a September or October 100% back to the office is now being staggered over multiple quarters. Given the supply issues, that's probably a good thing for us right now. As you said, it's definitely not something that we ever want to celebrate because I think it's a tough thing for employees across all of our customers, but it does make for a more practical matching of what we see as the demand to the supply over the next couple quarters here.
Yeah, absolutely. Now you mentioned something that I wanted to lean into just a little bit more with you, and that was kind of like the need for meeting quality to ensure same virtual meeting experience. I want to make sure I get that right. This has been something, by the way, that I think for years has been has created delays in the full buy-in on video solutions in the workplace. It's just that people have been told, oh, you're gonna, no longer need to travel. You can just do everything on video. But to truly feel immersive, and so we kind of went there's these pendulum swings. You pendulum one way to what I think the market, really stopped talking about, but used to some extent, which is telepresence, like this massive, in some case, multi-million-dollar spaces that were like supposed to feel like you're sitting across the table.
Right.
Now in the pandemic, we went to what I would say very rudimentary, but high volume, scalable, web-based video to just get us eye contact, right? Just so we could see each other. But it is really in the end all about, ubiquity. It's all about like basically the meeting quality shouldn't suffer. The learning environment shouldn't suffer. I mean, is this achievable in a hybrid world, people everywhere? What's the Poly view? How achievable is it really to create that uniform experience?
I would say, first of all, I think recognizing the challenge is step number one, and recognizing that it's not going to solve itself, which I think has perhaps been a bit of the pre-COVID sort of mindset. And so my challenge to our team is we've been around for decades. We've been doing this for many, many decades. So we have a lot of experience in it. But let's sit down now every time we have a hybrid meeting, which we've had a lot of recently, whether it's my board meeting or whether it's executive team meetings. Every time we have a meeting, let's make sure we're really analyzing the experience for those in the room and those out of the room. and really diagnosing what is making it not as good as all of us being in the same room. And one of the biggest changes that I think has occurred in the last year and a half has been that we're all on the same plane. We all have more or less the same headspace, more or less the same presentation of our eyes and our body language. And that actually is really important to being able to read a room. So in a room that's 30 feet long, what camera angles can we use? What camera intelligence can we put into our devices to make sure that we're solving that? How do we bring the whiteboard into that same plane as well? There's electronic solutions, there's physical solutions, there's collaboration solutions. Honestly, none of them are very good. And so what else can we do to improve that and make it much more viable? So that's number one. Number two, we're all becoming real pros, whether it's Zoom or Teams or StreamYard that we're doing here or Google or RingCentral or whatever else. But the fact that we're having to switch back and forth among all these various interfaces is challenging. And so what else can we as Poly do to help people make that as seamless as possible, so that whatever kind of call I have on my device, I want to make sure that that is seamlessly interfacing with the hardware and being launched.
Yeah, I like that. It's a little bit of what I remember WebRTC was trying to solve.
Right.
Doing video in the browser, you shouldn't have to only work within a certain environment or have to always have an additional app or tool to use something.
Right.
And of course, that always, with platforms being everybody's thing,
yeah,
the idea that you don't want, let's minimize things in the browser. Let's create this really feature-rich platform with connectors. Right. And so that, that's an opportunity that I've always seen for Poly is, third-party agnostic, hardware approach that basically says, whether you're Zooming, WebExing, Teamsing, RingCentraling, StreamYarding, right. I'm going to ing everything. The point is you just do it here. And I think there is a demand for that. It'll be interesting to see how significant that demand is to create that cross-platform accessibility. But I do think people are large, like I said, tech guys like us, tech folks, we all want to know about we want to know how the sausage is made.
Right. No one else.
Most people just want to eat, though.
That's exactly right. They just want to make it easy. Yeah.
And so making it easy is the thing. So we'd love to end the conversation on kind of a high note.
Sure.
We talked a little bit about the pandemic. Well, one of the things that's going to help us solve this pandemic is getting the mass portion of our population vaccinated.
Right.
I read, you talked about Tijuana, but I believe it was in Baja. The company made a cross-border effort to vaccinate about 5,000 workers and family members. Just, a good, warm-hearted moment. Tell me a little bit about what was.
Yeah, so there's a lot of bad news on the border between here and Mexico, obviously. But this is a real collaboration between both governments and Coca-Cola and Poly, were the lead companies that kind of stepped in to say, hey, we have thousands of workers on both sides, and from a Poly point of view, regardless of the international border that runs there, we're all one team, and so we wanted to take care of our teammates. We had COVID spiking down in Tijuana. We had a little bit more difficulty finding access to the vaccines down there. And so we worked with governments on both sides, and we're able to bus thousands of employees and family members and some of our vendors up to the San Diego border there and provide vaccination. And so I was down in Tijuana earlier this week visiting our factory and seeing the factory and looking at some of the improvements that we're making down there. And the warm reception was off the charts. I think people were very, very appreciative, and it keeps everyone safer. Of course, in a factory setting, you're working closely together, and so I think that's really important to make sure we're taking care of the team.
It's great to hear. If we get 5,000 from every company or more at scale over the next few months.
That's right.
We're building bridges here. We're building
bridges, and I guess I would say from an American worker point of view, right? It makes the goods that we all buy safer, cheaper, easier to get as well. And so it really helps us all kind of around on both sides.
Absolutely. Well, Dave Shull, CEO of Poly, thanks for taking a little time giving me the scoop, following up on your earnings, talking a little bit about some of the things. I'm sure thematically when you're out talking to press, talking to media analysts like ourselves, and of course things that I hope are strategically going on in the back rooms as you're trying to figure out what's next. A lot of promise here, a big opportunity. The future of work is certainly going to be hybrid, and I think probably, my perspective to the market is you guys have a role to play. I look forward to seeing how you make that role bigger and bigger, and we'll be watching.
Thanks, Daniel. Always a pleasure. Appreciate it.